Hi guys, it's Danielle Snyder with No Filter, and today is a very special day. We've got Noor Tagouri, her husband Adam, her sister-in-laws, my mom, my little sister Sydney.
It's a family affair.
It's a family affair. So Noor is an activist, feminist, journalist, and all-around badass. She has her podcast, Sold in America, about sex trafficking in the United States. She was the first ever Muslim woman to appear in Playboy magazine fully clothed, wearing a hijab. And she's one of my all-time favorite female icons. And I'm so excited that you're here today. Thank you so much.
I'm so happy to be here. I'm so happy to be here with our 6 beverages.
Right. So we were just saying we're very well hydrated.
Yeah.
We were having a debate whether
it's the skin. You have to do it for your skin.
Sparkling water or
still water or coffee or tea.
So we couldn't decide, so we did it all.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about, I've listened to your podcast, I've listened to a number of your public speaking engagements. I started to watch the documentary, which is very heavy.
Yeah.
And I can't, first of all, I can't believe that you've accomplished all of this by the age of 25. You're 25.
Yeah, I'm 25. It's really crazy because I've been like thinking a lot more about the fact that I'm 25 and why I kind of got to where I am now at a younger age. And part of it, funny enough, is because when I was 16, I graduated high school. I started college at 16. And the reason I did that was because that was the year that I had put on my hijab. And so I knew what I wanted to do. And then when I put on the hijab, my mom was like, well, why don't you just get a head start at your career if you know what you want to do, because it's going to be harder for you. So I did that. And then I had to work so much harder because I knew it was going to be like a difficult path to go down. And in the end, it forced me to be the best version of myself possible. So it was like this thing that I thought was gonna like keep me behind or keep me different or keep me whatever, was the thing that propelled me into being able to be successful and like take on all of the stories that I wanted to do at a younger age. So at the end of the day, it was like the thing that you thought was gonna keep you back is what really makes you the best version of yourself.
It's so funny. So I grew up Jewish in a community in Jacksonville, Florida, and there were not that many
that's
Jews.
true. Yeah.
And I grew up feeling like my mom and dad, both my parents were Jewish. It was always very important to them that my sister and I got bat mitzvahed and that, you know, we engaged in our faith and went to synagogue. And I remember thinking, because I listened to you talk in one of your podcasts about how you didn't feel comfortable with it. You didn't, like your younger sister wore a hijab before you did.
Yeah.
You had a conversation with your mom and said, I won't be wearing one, it's not me. And I do think, you know, your adolescence is a really challenging time to find yourself, but also be comfortable in your own skin because of the acne and, you know, you're gaining weight and all the hormones. So your faith is a whole other added layer, and you certainly, at least I certainly didn't feel comfortable wearing a Jewish star, or not that it's as demonstrative as a hijab.
No, but I feel like it's still like wearing your identity on your sleeve. It's still like letting people know something that you stand and believe in. And I think for me personally, growing up, I now reflecting on it realized like I had this strong distaste towards the hijab because I was surrounded by people literally with blonde hair and blue eyes. Like I was the only person
This
in
was
school.
In Maryland?
This was in Southern Maryland, who had like dark hair, and I just looked different than everyone else. And then I remember like as a kid, I would pray in class and I would say like, I really like, please don't let my mom remember to wear her scarf to school today, because my mom was a guidance counselor. She was super involved.
Like she would forget.
Yeah, but as a child, you have that thought. Like I thought, I remember sitting at my desk thinking maybe today she'll forget. And I mean, you're a kid, and for the first time ever, I interviewed my mom last year, and I have this whole like thing on audio because I started using it in my talks. And she said to me, she was like, yeah, I mean, I'm just finding out now, like that's how strongly you felt about it. But I mean, I totally understand that you were a kid in that area, and like, you were just trying to find yourself. But part of why I was so against it too was because I knew I wanted to be on television, and I had never seen anybody on TV with it before. So I was like, oh, like it just means that you wouldn't be able to. And my parents never talked about it to me because 1, they never thought I was going to put it on, and 2, it has to be a choice. So it has to be something that you decide to put on when you're ready. And so it had to come from like my own intention. And they were like, yeah, that's not going to happen. And so when I interviewed my mom last year, I asked her, I was like, how did you feel when I put it on? And I thought she was going to be like, you know, I was so proud of you and I was so whatever. And that's not what she said. She was like, to be honest with you, like I didn't think you were even going to keep it on. I didn't really care that you put it on. She was like, I was really proud of you in so many other things, but with that, I was like, I don't know. It doesn't seem like she never really wanted to do it. And she was like, but I was happy that you were finding yourself. I would have felt the same way about you with or without it on. Like it's something that's so personal, which is funny because it's like a thing that people take so seriously, and like everybody has such a different opinion on it, and people who aren't wearing it are either offended by it or feel a type of way about it. I mean, I was telling you, like, my mom right now, this second, just commented back on somebody on Instagram who was saying something, and the thing that he was saying was like, wear your hijab better or properly or something. And she was like, what are you like?
So
it's
chic
just,
to me. I want to wear one.
Yeah.
Should we do DANNIJO hijab?
Oh,
I have a very important question.
Oh.
Seriously, because nowadays you have to be, my sister and I, which I love that you have such a great relationship with your younger sister. We've had our fashion label for 11 years, and we just started moving into ready to wear. We're known for statement jewelry, which you can obviously wear, but you know, you have to be so sensitive to every single thing you do. Like how I just jokingly said, oh, should we do a DANNIJO hijab? You know, even the way you would roll out a collection like that, or if we did a collaboration with Noor, like what does that look and
what would
feel
that
like?
look like?
And how does a brand embrace wanting to
good
be
question.
more culturally, you know, I think the fashion industry can be so tone deaf, as evidenced by what happened.
Oh my gosh, what happened?
This is so juicy. Okay, so just word vomit on me.
Okay, so I will word vomit on you. Because you're asking this question, I'm really appreciative that you even asked this question, because a lot of times you see people do it and take on, like, tapping into Muslim fashion in a way where they aren't inclusive. They just try to be diverse. And so I have very strong opinions about diversity versus inclusion. I think first and foremost, you have to step back and look at the definition of both terms, right? So diversity means, like, in your campaign, you have people who look different, people who come from different backgrounds, and it's great. But inclusion is a seat at the table. Does the table represent the same thing that the campaign is representing? And if it doesn't, then where's the disconnect there, and what is your actual intention? Are you doing this just to make money off of other people's cultures and identities, and because you recognize that today people are so particular about where they're spending their money or who they're going to be supporting, because they want that sense of authenticity. They want that sense of, like, feeling represented and seeing heard. But when you go deeper, like, you can see the holes. You can see where people are doing it just because they think it's a trend, and you can see when people are doing it because they genuinely want to serve a community, or they want to let people know that they're seen and heard. So in an ideal situation, what that would look like, and the reason I'm saying I got excited that you asked this is because we've mentioned, like, after just some certain incidences that have happened this year. I mean, yeah, there's the Vogue incident, but the Vogue incident wasn't the only one. Like, I was on my way here looking at a recent, like, press feature, like a really big press feature that I did, and I'm just like, man, like, they're always messing up. I've never like had a 100% through and through they did the right thing experience, except with, like, one brand recently where they fact checked 5 times and they made sure that I was okay with everything, and I was like taken aback. I was like, wow, this is really incredible, but also this is what we should be expecting from people, especially when you're talking about a community that you're not familiar with.
It's not enough to just cover that community.
No, it's not, because
properly.
But what does it take to cover them properly? If the person who is covering them isn't a part of that community and familiar, then you need to spend time, 1, building trust, 2, constantly asking, like, questions. Hey, am I doing this right? Hey, what's the best way to do this? Hey, is this, like, are you comfortable with this photo? Are you comfortable with this? How can I, and constantly being, like, aware. It's a conversation, but a lot of people don't have that conversation. So, but if you're talking about, like, brands and fashion and people trying to kind of tap into that, like, of course it's amazing when people want to be, like, catering to our community, or just a lot, like, expanding on the communities they serve, because a lot of times when it comes to Muslim fashion, it's really modest fashion. And so if you're making things that are more covering, or scarves, like, there are ways, like, we're going to tap into that, because not a lot of brands have options for us, especially in summer, spring, summer. Like, I always
We're so good at spring, summer.
Oh my. Well, I always, like, complain about spring, summer collections, because I'm like, even when we were going to shows during Fashion Month, and they would ask to dress you in spring, summer, I'd be like, can I tap?
Coverage.
No, of course not. So I'm like, can I tap into, like, fall, winter, or pre-fall? Like, because these are the places that I'm going to be able to get outfits from. So that's one thing. But also, like, if you were, I mean, we wear scarves that you know, everybody will wear different scarves of different materials. So some people wear a square scarf or a rectangle scarf. I just closed for Rebecca Minkoff's show, and she had a matching scarf for the jumpsuit, and it was just a regular scarf, but it ended up being the perfect material and the perfect cut for what I would wear on my head anyway. So it ended up working out, but it wasn't even intentional. She just had that in her collection, and it worked out for me to wear. But if your intention is to actually cater to a community and make hijabs that people will end up wearing as scarves anyway, or make more modest pieces that are actually inclusive, because you can have like a maxi dress, but a lot of maxi dresses will have a really big slit in it, and I'm just like, I can't wear that.
That defeats the purpose.
But to people, it doesn't, like,
right,
they think about it, right?
For you to be able to wear it.
So, I mean, my response to that is just like, if that's your intention, then you really have to tap into true inclusion. And what that looks like is like, call somebody up, include them in the conversation, and then pay them for it. Like, don't sit there and act like you're doing them a favor, because the fact of the matter is modest fashion is a $3 billion market. Like, people across the world are spending money in this, and it's not just Muslims.
Right.
It's people who just want to touch and embrace into like a certain style of clothing or fashion.
Body.
Yeah, like, which, I mean, a lot of modest fashion is just, I mean, most of it is just so incredible, and there's so many people who are doing it right. I'm a really big fan of The Modist. I'm really good friends with the team there.
One of my really good friends is a buyer there.
Really?
Sasha Sorokin.
Sasha is like one of the founders. Yeah.
We love you, Sasha.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I met Sasha 100 years ago when we first launched DANNIJO. She was at Net-a-Porter.
Yeah, when she was at Net-a-Porter. I met Sasha in Turkey at Istanbul Fashion Week where I was speaking. I met her in Ghazlan.
She's
and
the best.
I didn't even, like, the Modist was a concept in the womb at the time. They just told me they were working on something.
It's
and I
brilliant.
never, ever, I mean, I wore them yesterday accepting an award to the beauties, and I'm wearing them all weekend. Like,
Sasha.
They are so incredible. They do it right. And it's so amazing because I met them and they didn't even tell me what the concept was. They just said they're working on something huge. And this was years ago. And there was something about their energy where I was just like, whatever it is that you guys are doing, I'm going to support. And when it came out, I have had tears in my eyes crying about it, because I was like, I've never felt like I had something that was made for me before you guys came around.
So have you done a collaboration with them?
That's a good question. I mean, I work with them all the time. I use them for all of my events and everything, and I'm so close to all of them. They have been wanting to do something together for a very long time, and I just want to wait for like the right thing to do with them.
Okay, but maybe it's the DANNIJO times Modist times Noor Hijab.
Oh my gosh, I mean,
because we're an accessory-based company, it's a conversation piece, and the whole thing is about this. So we always say, my sister and I, we got into jewelry because my dad's a heart doctor, and we used to play with his medical tools when we were
I heard that. I was like, this is so amazing.
random.
My dad's also a doctor, and I used to play with it. I have like pictures playing with his tools
See,
when
we're
I was
meant
little.
to be.
Yeah, this is absolutely crazy.
So the way that we sort of fell into it was my sister and I would make our own jewelry. We'd wear it around school and campus. We were young. We were once young. And it became a conversation piece. Oh, where'd you get that? I made it. And so the whole idea is using jewelry as a vehicle to have conversations.
To start conversations, absolutely.
So it is really cool with the tie-in with
That is so cool.
sort of the fabric of this conversation becoming, whether it's a headscarf or whatever it is, but to trigger conversation. So it's not fashion just for fashion's sake. Of course, the byproduct is you look beautiful, but to talk about things.
I mean, that's kind of always been like my intention with everything that we tap into, everything that I do. I always wanted to have a root of some type of storytelling and conversation starters. When Adam and I first started working together way back when, and we had our first collection to combat sex trafficking, every single piece was intentionally made to be a conversation starter. And the best messages we got were from people around the world who were like, I just got to talk about like empowerment with a stranger today. I got to talk about trafficking with somebody today. And it was all because of this thing that we were wearing. And I was like, that's the whole point. So even when we tap into these worlds, like I want to make sure that people understand what's behind it. And the thing about fashion today is like, if you really care about it and you see it as an art, and you understand like who you're buying, what their own story is, and where they're coming from. Like yesterday, I wore a piece that was like it was just really incredible that I got from the Modist, and it was this Ukrainian designer who like mixes her traditional clothing with modernism, and it was like such a conversation starter. And it was like this really incredible, beautiful, modest piece that was done like by somebody who is really celebrating their own stories and being able to just tap into that. And now, especially like when you're spending money, you should know where you're spending your money and who you're supporting, which is why like I feel really lucky. I mean, recently we've become such good friends with like so many incredible designers who aren't just incredible designers, but are actually incredible humans.
People, right.
Yeah. And then when you have that, you get so excited to celebrate them and like so
and be
excited
hugged
to wear.
by them in their
It's
clothes.
literally being hugged by them. I think about that with our very close friend Philip Lim, who like is so just, I mean, a beautiful soul, and like he does such incredible work, and he's always speaking up, and he's always like just elevating other people's voices and being so celebratory and supportive of others. And he works like, and he talks about sustainability, and he talks about like supporting independent designers, and he's so vocal about these things, but also like has the most incredible pieces. So
right.
It's like you get
so
to celebrate.
You
exactly.
wear something cool and you wear someone you love.
Yeah.
Random question now, because I've got the creative juices flowing. Can a hijab have words on it or no?
Oh yeah.
Because you're a storyteller, I'm a storyteller, and we were talking about it became a conversation piece. Like, wouldn't it be so great if we chose for our collaboration different women that celebrated different mentalities or stories, and they wrote their own story, and it was on the hijab? I mean, I would live in that.
Yeah, that's
I would
actually.
be like, I'm channeling Noor today, and wear her around my head, or Ashley Graham or whomever has an interesting perspective. But maybe it's not just Muslim. Maybe it's
it's everybody. Like that thing is like everybody can tap it. First of all, it's like such a. I know that like hijab is most commonly seen as like a Muslim thing. But hijab is rooted in something that has like been in Christianity and Judaism for a very long time as well. Like if you see any like depiction of Jesus's mother Mary, she's wearing a hijab, and it's something that like you see people in the Jewish community embracing, you see nuns embracing today. So I mean the conversation
sort of
happens
universal.
with it is, but people don't realize that, and the conversation happens the most among Muslim women because of how we are depicted in the media and where people like to take that conversation,
right.
and the stereotypes that come from that, which is so harmful. But it's one of the things that like is a personal choice that is celebrated, and in the circumstances that it isn't a personal choice, which in certain countries or certain cultures or places that happens, like that it needs to be clarified that that's not rooted in religion, that's rooted in culture, and like any other culture who has certain people who choose to weaponize certain things that are a part of a religion or that are a part of that society, like that ends up happening, and that's super harmful as well. But the root of what it is to be empowering, is to remind people that what you have to say matters more than anything else, is to remind yourself that you live for something bigger than yourself. And so it's like you have to kind of remember where the intention is coming from. But going back to the words thing, it's funny. There's a designer named Bonnie Young who I just like wore her. She had these incredible like silk like floral pants that just looked like she painted on them specifically herself. And her daughter is on The Voice right now, and
random.
It was so random.
And he's like, I know, I've seen this.
Oh, really? Yeah, she's so amazing. And so she like reached out to me after she saw me wearing her pants, and she was like, my daughter wrote this song about empowerment. I really want to like make you a hijab with her lyrics on it. Would that be okay?
How crazy.
And I was like, yeah, totally. I would totally wear that. I mean, I also have like drawers filled with like color coordinated hijabs. We just saw our friends who run this incredible like candle company in Rome, and they're like so close to us, and they have like this, it's very like gothic art and like really beautiful. Cool. And there are these like incredible I got like a couple of scarves that have these paintings, and it's like this like woman with like she's like from like I don't know, like a Renaissance era, and it has like the word courage on it, and it has like little messages all over it and stuff, and I'm like dying to wear that.
Side note, because we're doing this, I'm dying. Right, guys, team? Interesting question, because so much of fashion pulls from travel and communities and being inspired because the creator, the designer, immersed themselves in a different culture on a trip or whatever. There's such a fine line between wanting to embrace and celebrate and be inspired by and offending and appropriating. Totally. Where do you draw that line? And it's like, how do you, I find it so hard as a fashion brand, because my sister and I are learning. I mean, we don't know everything, and we're not acting like we do, but it's like, if we wanted to put a headscarf over a model and she's white, or, it's so easy to do the wrong thing. Not that you're not.
It's not a bad intention. It's just, it's not knowing. It's just
it's
ignorance.
naive,
But part of that goes to when you find the inspiration from a certain place, being able to tap into that community and asking them and including them in the conversation. Because if you were to put a headscarf as a hijab,
we didn't.
No, I know. I'm not saying that you did, but
I'm just saying,
if
it's
it was
easy for something like that to.
I mean, if the person was Muslim, that's different. But it's about including people in the conversation, because I think the problem, yes, you can take inspiration from places, but especially with communities who have been oppressed, that's typically when we're okay, this is appropriation, because what that ends up meaning is that you're profiting off of a culture and a community where that's not only been oppressed, but when Muslim women wear hijab, people get targeted, people have gotten killed. This is something. And so unless you're speaking up and defending these women and being a part of their fight as well, then who are you to take from their community and their message? That's why my message is so important about inclusion. It's just get people in the room and keep them in the conversation, because we want to be a part of the conversation. We want you to celebrate us. But we want it to be our voices leading it, which is why even in my own storytelling, I always say I hate the phrase giving a voice to the voiceless, because I don't believe anybody is voiceless. I just believe that we've never passed the mic to the right communities, the people who have been unheard all of these years.
Soundbite.
And so when we do that, when we give them the mic, when we let them tell their own stories, and you have a platform to let them to elevate their voices, that's where true inclusion comes in. That's where true teamwork and service comes in. Because at the end of the day, if you're doing something to just make money and not be of service to a community, then and somebody said this so beautifully yesterday when they were accepting their award at the Beauties, and she was if you're living just for yourself and you're not living to do stuff for other people, then you're not maximizing on your potential, essentially, and you're thinking too small. That's what she said. She said you're thinking too small, and I never thought about it that in those exact terms, but I've always thought this way, and I was just that's how we should start framing this, is if you're thinking only about yourself and you're only thinking about your own community, then you're thinking too small, because you weren't brought to this earth to just serve yourself and then feel unfulfilled in the process. Because if your only purpose is to do things for yourself, you're never going to feel fulfilled, and you're never going to maximize on who you could possibly be. But if you're thinking big and you're thinking of being in service of everybody else, then you have the potential to truly make remarkable change and also feel great on the inside. And I know that at the end of the day, that is where people feel the most heard, and that's where people resonate the most, is when you're actually seeing yourself and seeing the ripple effect of what you are saying and what you have to do.
I love that.
Yeah.
Totally switching gears. I am dying. So I've listened to a few episodes of Sold in America, which is Noor's podcast about sex trafficking in America. What's the overall takeaway? I know you felt very differently at the end of the 8 episodes than you did going into it. What's the takeaway in a nutshell?
So I think the takeaway for Sold in America, Sold in America started out as just a documentary. It wasn't intended to be a podcast, but we had we knew that we wanted audio and a podcast producer with us. We thought maybe it would be one episode on someone else's show. We didn't know where it was going to go exactly. But Sold in America started out as an investigative series on the sex trade. And then when we started reporting, we realized there's no way to actually tell this story without talking about the entire sex trade, not just sex trafficking, which is what typical documentaries on this topic do. They only talk about trafficking. So then it ended up turning into this whole 2-year project. And the takeaway from that, that we got this really incredible review in the Atlantic, who I was so happy that they said it this way, because I didn't really think about it that way. But they were it doesn't end with really a solution specifically. It just ends with putting everything out on the table, and sometimes to make change, that's just what you need. You need everything on the table, and then you find yourself in the problem and you find yourself in the solution. So for me, I think the biggest takeaway though was changing the way people think about this, no matter what aspect of it, no matter if you have no relation to this topic, no matter if you've been in foster care, or if you are a survivor of sex trafficking, or if you are a sex worker, or if you are a government official, or if you are a doctor. Every single person who is listening to it is going to take something different away from it, because we were able to put together the voices of everybody in the spectrum of the sex trade, and we were able to tie it back to everyone who's listening. And so we were using this this application called Ground Source, where people were able to text us like to get photos or videos, and then also submit their own voice recordings of their own experiences. And we had people from all over the world, tens of thousands of people, submit their own stories and experiences. And that's everything from men who were buying sex talking to us, from women who were like, I caught my husband buying sex and now we're working through it, or he did this previously and then he got help and then now he's a really incredible example for our kids. Or somebody who had messaged me on Instagram and it was like, I was a former meth addict and I didn't realize that I had been trafficked until I listened to this podcast. Like, the most deep and personal, incredible things, because we were able to like do this in the most vulnerable way. And what's different about the podcast and the documentary is that the podcast was my personal journey of reporting it, including the investigative work. The documentary just focused on the work itself, but the podcast had that personal guide aspect to it, because of why this was so important to me, and because the stories that I always cover have some type of personal tie. Even if I'm not like directly related to the issue, I always make it personal, because I think that when you go into a room,
it's the best story.
And it has to be, when you go into a room and you have like the opportunity to have someone open up and share your story, we shouldn't expect that they owe us that. It has to be a mutual exchange. And if it's a mutual exchange and you give a part of yourself in the process, then you get something that's even more profound, and then the people who are listening can always relate to that.
What's your relationship with sex? Don't you think that's a great question?
That's such a never.
It's called No Filter, guys.
That's so
gotta
funny.
Get racy.
Well, when you're asking me this directly from Sold in America, so I think that like I'm just gonna tie this back into that. I mean, the reason I started the documentary, I was so interested in it, is because of my own incident, my first incident of sexual violence when I was 12 years old. And I
was in Libya?
No, that was in Saudi Arabia.
Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, not to say that it has anything to do with the fact that I was in Saudi Arabia, because that happened.
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, I know, but I like to clarify that, because I know we were visiting, we were doing like the smaller pilgrimage, and it happened there. But I mean, I came back home and then I became a teenager, and it happened several times in different places here.
Right.
So that was why I cared so much about covering this topic, because I had experienced something that was traumatic to me, but it was a fraction of what I had heard about later on that people were going through with trafficking. So I believe that finding your purpose is combining the things that pain you the most with your skills and your talents. And that was an issue that pained me so much, was violence against women. So I decided to dedicate part of my life to that, whether it was at the time I was in high school and college, writing papers on it. And then as soon as I would get a job in news, I would always report on this. So that was how it always started. And then honestly, like while reporting Sold in America, I just had my eyes open. Like when you go into stories and when you go into issues and you're like, how can I find the least common denominator that I have with these people? How can I connect with them? At the end of it, I realized like I actually have like so much more in common with sex workers than I could have even imagined. And one of the last sex workers that I interviewed for the podcast told me that she had written a piece on women in hijab and how she related to them, because society was always telling us how to dress. And I was like, that is
so interesting.
But to me, that was part of why I was able to connect with sex workers all the time, was because I knew what it was like for people to say, like, this is how you should use your body, this is how you should dress, this is how you should look. Absolutely. So when you find that commonality, and I when I was in Paris years ago, I did an interview that ended up being like this really big deal, and I didn't realize it at the time, but they have strict laws against wearing the hijab.
Really?
Yeah. Like you can't wear it at school or government buildings, and yeah, it's madness kind of. And I went on television there and I was like, I don't care if you go out completely naked or completely covered, the government shouldn't be telling you how to dress. And it started this whole like scandal. And to me, I was just always taught that like you choose for yourself how you express that, and you should always fight for people's rights to be able to express that, to be able to do that for themselves. And And it's sad because you see that doesn't happen so often. But at the end of the day, if I have that in common with somebody like the people that I was interviewing in my stories, I know what it feels like, even if it's not the exact same experience. And from that, you build and you tell those stories.
You build trust.
Oh,
and
100%.
You bring out their innermost personal.
The building trusting is the biggest, most important part of the entire process.
Oh my God, now you made me want to ask another question. I was going to go a different direction, but because you're a journalist and because you're a storyteller, just so you know, when I was a little girl, I dreamt of being Ed Bradley. Did you ever watch 60 Minutes?
Like a long time ago.
He was the coolest. Remember, Mom? So I always said, I'm going to be Ed Bradley. And, you know, I don't know, it's just like an innate thing. The way that you're able to just immediately meet someone and find commonality and make them feel comfortable. I mean, you're way better than me, but I feel like that's like something I can relate to, and that's why I always wanted to be a journalist, not in the traditional sense of the word journalist, but just have conversations with people, and that's how I thought, oh, well, jewelry is a vehicle to have a conversation and find common ground. What are some of the things that you feel are innate to you that make you a storyteller and a journalist by nature?
So I've always naturally, before I even knew what the word journalist was, I like loved asking questions. I'm a very, very, very curious person. So I loved asking questions. I loved telling stories, and I always like would leave the house with a book in hand. So I loved reading, and I think for me, it was the fact that I just really loved to like learn from people, and I loved learning about people's lives. Like I remember when I was like the first time I realized, I think that, you know, this is for sure what I was going to do. I was 11 and I was taking a mosaic class with my grandmother. It was like the senior citizens mosaic class. And I was so excited to go. And I went in and I just started asking everybody questions. And I was talking to this guy who was like a World War II vet. And at the end of like the hour, I finished my little mosaic, and then the guy stood up, and in front of everybody he said, you know, we've been in this class with everyone here for 3 months and didn't know more than each other's names, and you got us all to share our life story. And I was like, oh yeah, I can do that. Like that's my thing. And I was 11 at the time, and I just
wish someone had
knew.
videoed that.
I know, right?
Imagine.
Well, I just found
that's like YouTube gold.
I literally just found all of these home videos because my sister converted a bunch of VHS tapes to like MP4 files for my mom's birthday. And I found all of these videos of like my parents telling me to report the news when I was 8. Like I have these like I'm sitting here like this, and I'm like, this is like the news with Noor and the weather today and whatever. And so then I found like a series of videos of my parents saying like, Noor, do your news. And I would like tell my younger siblings to do their news. And like it was just it became a thing. And I always knew that they pushed me into this and that they like were very encouraging with it, but I like hadn't remembered until then. And I like after I saw these videos, I was like, oh my God, yeah, I realized that they would always ask me that, and so they would put a camera in my face and ask me questions, and I was like, on right away.
Speaking of cameras, you have such a powerful voice, and I mean, I think you're disarming, and you're warm and beautiful and different and special. Would you ever consider running for president? Did you think I was going there?
No, I didn't think you were going there.
Her energy reminds me.
You're really good.
You remind me of Yara Shahidi.
I'm speaking with her tomorrow.
You have to give her a big hug for me. Her and her mom. And her mom, the way
her mom was supposed to moderate the talk.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Carrie and Yara, we love you. Have you met them?
Yeah, I spoke with Yara at Complex Con, and I'm speaking with her tomorrow for Beauty Con.
Mainly just because both of your energies, you're both so young, and I don't mean that as
she's I want her to be president.
I think the two of you should run together on the same ballot.
I think she should run, and I will cover it.
I can be your stylist.
I think she should run, and I will cover the stories.
So you wouldn't ever.
It's so funny because I think like maybe once a week people will like ask me if I'll ever go into politics, and I think that there are just so many other people who would do so much better, and I want to be able to support people and support issues. But so I used to hate when people would call me an activist. I was like, just because people would call me an activist because I wore hijab and I was a reporter, and I was like, I'm just doing what any other reporter would do. Just because I'm a minority doing it doesn't mean that automatically makes me an activist. But then people insisted, and I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna take my
cool.
narrative. I changed the narrative entirely, and so I said, I'll tell you how I'm an activist. The way that I equip people with information and stories in a radical way so that they can be informed, they can go out and vote, they can go out and make change and stuff, in itself is a form of activism, because I refuse to stay within the lines of what I was taught was how to be the most effective, objective journalist. I think that it's really silly to sit and say that everyone is purely 100% objective, because if you go into a newsroom, almost every newsroom's director is an older white man, and those are the people who are deciding what stories are the most important to tell. And that in itself is a bias,
right?
Because you're choosing certain stories based on your experiences of what's important to tell. So if your newsroom isn't representative of the communities that you're talking about, then I don't think that you are completely objective. And so for me, I think the way that I tell stories and I try to immerse myself in communities that are underrepresented and try to do right by them and give them the mic and try to give them a platform, then that in itself is a form of activism. I think that's my strong suit. So I'm hoping that I stay there.
It's so funny that you and Yara are both such forces to be reckoned with, and that
That's such a compliment. I love her so much.
The best,
yeah.
And her mom is very special.
I after I spoke with Yara, I went up to her mom. I was like, I just want to say thank you.
You did such a great
you
job.
She's so wonderful.
She's pretty special, and I met them. I actually sat next to them at a dinner, of some sort of fashion dinner that my friend Lisette organized, and fell in love immediately. And the first thing I did was walk over. I sat next to Yara. I walked over to Carrie and said, whatever you did to this child, I hope I'm like you as a mother when I grow up. Because
she gave a crash course.
And they have such a special bond. And anyways, okay, so you're not interested in being president. That's okay.
Yeah, it's okay.
What do you think of our president? Just make that a GIF.
Just make that a GIF. It's so interesting. I feel like it's I try not to talk about directly the president specifically because of I have very clear opinions, and I think that a lot of people do, especially if you're a Muslim. It's kind of known. You're just
it's that face that you
he imposed a Muslim ban on the country. There's very clear feelings from him towards our community. I have a cousin who goes to Harvard who currently had to drop out of this semester, and she's stuck overseas because she went to see her family and can't get back in the country, and she's a Harvard student. These are my parents immigrated here from Libya. My mom came here when she was 11. My dad came here when he was 27, and are incredible community members, but obviously that isn't, you don't have to be an incredible community member to be here. The country was built on immigrants and welcoming people. I don't want to waste my time talking about that, but okay. He has very clear feelings about us.
Right. Okay, as far as you're a big sister, so I have a very special relationship with my sister. We've had our company together for 11 years. What do you hope to instill in your sister through your work? Because I would imagine she looks up to you and...
I have sisters.
Sisters! And a brother.
I have 2 brothers and 3 sisters.
This is
4
more
sisters.
Than I even read about.
And 2 sister-in-laws. Yeah, we have a ton of
And we
siblings.
have the 2 sisters.
Yeah, they're here. I always say that I want to be the person I wish I would have had when I was 12. My youngest sister is 13, so I always say that. I want to be the person that I wish I had when I was her age. And I think for them, I just want everyone to find their truth and find their place and be confident in who they are. None of my siblings are interested in doing what I do. Everybody has completely different interests, but I think being able to sit and facilitate and help them recognize that what they want to do or who they want to become is valid and is celebrated, and that there are people paving paths for all of us in this space. But mainly just being able to find your own voice and staying confident in it. I think that so often we are used to people taking narratives from us and telling our stories for us. I've had horrible experiences of that, even just in the most recent last few weeks. And it's a constant fight. And I always say one day, we have this long list of every single publication and brand and people who have done this to us. And I'm just like, one day when the time is right, we will talk about all of this. In the meantime, you kind of have to keep your head down, and you have to work, and you have to get to a place where you have a seat at the table and you are making those decisions so that there aren't as many mess ups as there are now.
How has the Muslim community embraced you? Has there been, I mean, you're such a voice, and I would think it would all be positive, but how does your own, your own community, I mean, is it because you're so progressive?
So funny. Yeah, I mean, I think that, so there are like 3.3 million Muslims in the country, in the United States, and so there's 3.3 million ways to be a Muslim. So
am I saying it wrong? I say Muslim.
Oh yeah, I mean we just say Muslim.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's so much prettier.
People say Muslim.
So much prettier when
Muslim.
she says it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, of course, there's a lot of support from my own community, and then there's a lot of people who are very critical. But that, like, so I will say it in this way. There's a concept called horizontal hostility that I think everybody should read about. It's talked about in Adam Grant's book, The Originals, and when I read the chapter on it, my mind just was blown because it was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know there was a word for this. So horizontal hostility is when the people who you have common missions with, and common, not just missions, but the way you go about life. You guys have common goals and missions, and those are the people that feel the most estranged to you and have the most hostility between you, because in their minds they think that you should be exactly how they live their life. You should carry the same values and embrace the way that they've taken on life.
Things.
So, and if you don't do that in the slightest way, then they completely X you, or they completely feel like you're horrible. It's like there was a study done where it was a list of like minority communities, but one example is that like vegans feel a stronger distaste towards vegetarians than non-vegetarians, because they feel like, well, if you're a vegetarian, you should be going all the way because you already know that you should that you should be doing this. And so it's the same way, I think, with minority religious communities, where it's just like, I mean, I practice completely different than the next person, but it's because, one, faith is really, really personal, but also when it comes to being Muslim, it's so personal, but people forget it's personal because you can see it, right? So like if you can see me wearing a hijab,
in a way that you
immediately you don't think that the hijab is personal, when it's the most personal decision that you can make. And so
it's your relationship with God, right?
Right, but people don't take the time to think deeper than that. They think about, well, one, people obsess over how women dress to begin with, so there's that. But also, we don't think deeper than the fact that, like, this is so personal, and we should respect how every person practices. So there's a concept that I learned at a retreat by this community organization called candidly, which is based in the Bay Area. They're so incredible. It's where our spiritual teachers are from, and there's this idea of public minimum, private maximum. So private maximum is how you practice things privately, just in your life, and like what you adopt in your private life. And then the public minimum is the bare minimum that it takes for you to, say, be a Muslim or be a vegetarian or be whatever. And the idea of making sure that you never impose your private maximum, all of the ways that you practice, on people's public minimums, and saying, well, you're not good enough because you don't do X, Y, and Z that you do privately. So if the public minimum to be a Muslim is the belief in one God, that's all it takes, is like belief in one God. But your private maximum is that you wear the hijab, that you pray 5 times a day, that you fast, that you do these things, and you impose that on other people, then you're infringing on their right to be as they should be, and you're taking away from the way that they practice. And that concept really opened my mind to being able to use those principles in things that weren't just with religion, it's just with the ways that people practice. Why should you impose the way that you practice life privately on the way people show it publicly? And that's not our place to do that. And as soon as you do that, you create a system of low judgment, because I don't believe that there's spaces for no judgment. Everybody has judgment, but low judgment is the sense that, like, even if a judgment passes your mind, you let it go and you don't act on it. Yeah.
For the hijab, I would imagine now it's become so iconic to you and your work, and whether or not you intended for that.
Yeah.
But you are also a real force in the fashion community. Have you been to photo shoots? Like, I know you were the first woman to be photographed, Muslim woman to be photographed in Playboy magazine, fully clothed, wearing a hijab.
Yeah.
Have you been to shoots where they've said, can you take that off, or can you wear this? Do you show up to shoots with your own clothing options?
I show up to shoots with a suitcase filled with scarves because no one really thinks to bring them.
Right.
Which is really frustrating because you have every other accessory. If you wanted to ask, like, I can send you all of the designers. People have scarves. There have been a couple of sets where people have them, but they usually ask you to bring your own, which is kind of frustrating. But
we have to make this.
Yeah, they're very limited in that. Just like I'm like, you can pull. There's so many people and places that have it, so whatever. Nobody ever asks me to take it off because if you're asking me to be on set for a shoot, then you already know. But
so
people
you never
will.
had an experience early on.
I had an experience when I was like working in television where people would be like, can you take it off for the broadcast?
And you'd say no.
And I'd be like, that's not why I'm here. No, of course not. But I realized that those spaces are not the ones for me. So, but I mean, for people to ask like, will you wear this or will you do this? Yeah, that happens all the time. And then I think to myself, if you had more inclusion within your company and on this set, you wouldn't be asking me this because you guys would have already had that conversation, or you would have people who are culturally aware. You don't have to be Muslim to know like what most Muslim people are comfortable with or what you should be asking about, because some aren't comfortable with this. But people don't really have those conversations, and we don't take the time to actually be inclusive. I think a lot of people care more about making money off of a campaign that's diverse than actually paying people to be part of like the conversation, because you want to carry this out deeper than just a trendy diversity campaign.
For the Vogue incident that I know you don't want to talk about too much because it's been talked about a lot, but I do want to know so Vogue confused you with Noor, what's her last name, Bakari? Am I saying it right?
Bukhari, yeah, she was a
actress?
retired Pakistani actress who I didn't know who she was until I Googled her.
Have you communicated with her since?
No, I don't know anything about her. And
what did Vogue do to rectify? So nothing. I love it. Adam's laughing. So Adam's with us. So Adam, that's another, I'm segueing into you after, but they did nothing.
They put out
an apology?
An apology, kind of.
They should reshoot you and do a whole feature. You should be on the cover of, Anna, should she be on the cover of the next issue of Vogue? Right? So set it straight. Right?
Yeah.
So the only thing they did was issue a public apology, and where did that live?
Online. It lived online.
You have a long. Don't forget the little people, by the way, when you're on all the covers of the magazine.
Yeah. I had a cover. We had a cover come out today. Porter edit came out today,
amazing!
Which was cool. And I interviewed all of the girls in it, which is amazing. So they played into my job, and put me on the cover, which is awesome. But yeah,
that's so cool. Porter's one of my favorites.
They're incredible. I mean, obviously, yeah, they're really amazing. And yeah, but Vogue, they issued an apology, and then in the March issue, they had a little thing correcting it. That's what happened.
Okay. All right. So now let's talk about happy things. Adam. So how did you meet your husband? And you guys worked together, right?
Yeah. So we worked. So Adam has a clothing line that, can I announce that it's officially what it officially is now?
Let's zoom in on how adorable.
Yeah.
Adam's so cute.
So Adam has a clothing line that he just officially turned into a nonprofit. Yay.
Congrats.
Should bring him on the show and talk about all
let's
that.
do your next episode.
Yeah, that's a whole other amazing thing that he's working on. But originally, his business model was donating 50% of the profits to a charity of a customer's choice, and then every season he would collaborate with a public figure and do a collection for their cause and to the charity of their choice. So I met him when he was working with Lupe Fiasco, and I was wearing his shirt at a convention, and then 3 years later, after I released my first documentary that I self-produced, he reached out about working together, and I was like, yeah, let's work on a collection for to combat sex trafficking, because of course that's the issue that I was really passionate about. And then we did it, and it took on a life of its own. It blew up. We ended up going on tour around the country and had all of these pop-ups, and our families traveled together and toured together, and within a year and a half we were married. We became best friends, and then
that's
it was
the best.
Yeah.
That's like me and my fiance, best friends, and then you can't be apart.
Yeah, and then it was just I feel like you can't, That's exactly it. That was exactly it. And then I just, I mean, I always joke around and tell him I married him for his family, which I kind of did.
Well, I mean, you are marrying the family.
Yeah. So, I mean, I just loved them so much, and we all like got super close. And then, we got married, and it was crazy because we both just started growing together, and we like kind of shaped things together. So he ended up basically becoming my manager, strategist, and creative director, like while in the process of all of this, and as we were building things. And so he is a part of he's like an incredible part of where I'm going and what I've been doing today.
And how is that working together? How's that? I mean, I'm like looking at Adam, but how is it working together?
Oh, it's the best thing in the entire world.
It's the best thing in the entire world.
It's the best thing in the entire world because somebody has your back and like your best interest, and at the end of the day, like they're the only person that has your absolute best interest in the work that you're doing, because it isn't about just cutting the check. It's about like your legacy and your message and everything that, I mean, he was raised very similarly to me, where everything that we do is rooted in service and giving back and making sure that you're doing it the right way. And so we've been able to build on that, and it's like a really great, I mean, and his skill sets and talents complement mine. So what he's really good at, I'm not. What I'm really good at, he's not. And so we kind of just work together.
It's like me and my sister and me and my husband, or soon-to-be husband.
Yeah, so then you just become like literally like a power force.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really awesome.
Back to personal style. Should I ask about your wedding and your marriage? Do you want to talk about that?
Sure, I mean, yeah.
Tell me about your wedding, because I'm getting married next month. I want to know everything.
Oh my God, you're getting married next month?
I'm getting married May 11th.
That's our 2-year anniversary will be May 20th.
Guys, we were meant to be together.
Yeah.
You have to meet Brandon.
Yeah,
He tries to come to some of the podcasts. He went to Gary Vaynerchuk's, which was really fun.
Oh my gosh, he's a friend of ours. That's awesome.
He's the best. Gary's the best. Gary thinks I'm a mini him. Yeah. He thinks I'm the 34-year-old female version of him. And my dad's name's Gary.
No.
So we hit it off. We sat next to each other at South by Southwest like 7 years ago, and we were like,
7 years ago?
Life friends here, yeah.
That's incredible. He's really wonderful.
But anyways, you'll eventually have to meet Brandon. I was going to ask you, because I'm getting married next month, what was your wedding like? Where was it?
Okay, cool. That's
any cool rituals, or did you do your own vows? Tell me everything.
Oh, okay. So my Libyan tradition, Libyan tradition, technically the wedding is like 7 days long. We did 3 little things after the engagement. So the first night was like just at my family's house, and I wore this like pink traditional in Maryland, pink traditional outfit that and it's just super Libyan, and you wear no makeup. It's so funny. The event is called like the Shana, which is like the ugly. So basically so
it's like the ugliest you're gonna look for the series of 7 days?
Yeah, well, it's like, my wedding was not 7 days. That would be bananas. But the night before, the henna, which is like the henna tattoos, but like we have a ceremony for that. So I wore this like pink outfit, and you did, So, and I just wore no makeup, and it was like, haha. I mean, back in Libya, it's like they take it so seriously. They like try to make the bride look gross so that the next day is her wedding and she looks fabulous.
Actually, genius.
Yeah, it's so
You're like,
it's so
you don't
fun.
look so hot, and the next day it's like, what? I'm marrying a swan.
Oh my God, yeah. Adam got in trouble with my dad because Adam called me ugly when he saw me, but like was joking. What did you say?
Well, I was leaving, and I said, have fun in your trash bag, because they wrap you in a tarp.
Oh yeah, they were wrapping whatever. My dad was like, don't ever talk to my dad. He was making a joke. My dad was so protective. He was like, you're like, it was his first kid getting married. It was so funny. When my dad was walking me down the aisle, he was like, my dad's like a very, very jokester type person. He was like, should we just go? Should we? And he was being so serious. He was like, let's just run. Yeah. He was being so serious too, like to kind of prank Adam, and I hate pranks. And I was like, no.
You're like, keep
That's what I was doing.
Keep walking.
It was so funny. So we had that, and then the next day we did a henna, and that ended up being like really big. So I wore like I'm not even kidding, like 30 pounds of like just solid gold, and like wrapped in like this silver fabric, and it's like big. You can't even move in it, and your hands and your feet are covered in henna. My grandma dressed me. It was really, really special. And that was
really upgraded from the garbage bag.
Yeah, big upgrade. Had full face of makeup, and so we did that. And then I also wore a Moroccan dress because Adam's dad is from Morocco. And when
I'm going there for my honeymoon.
No way.
Yeah, we're going to Marrakesh. You have to tell us where you go.
Yeah, no, we'll do. So we got my Moroccan henna outfit from Marrakesh because after all of the pop-ups and everything, his dad invited us to go to Morocco together, and we like road tripped, and then that's when we decided we were,
Do you guys want to meet us there?
Yeah.
I'm
We're in
texting you.
Morocco
I'm texting you.
anytime.
Okay, done.
So then, so we did that. That was the hinna, and then a month later, because this was all while I was filming Sold in America, so I literally had to like schedule the wedding. It was really bad. And then we decided that we wanted to get married on a beach, and so our friends.
So are we.
No, where are you getting married?
In the Bahamas.
Oh my gosh, we're getting married in Miami. We got married in Miami.
We looked at Miami, but it was just
In Miami.
It was you didn't decide, right? Like,
Did he decide where? No, okay, like it honestly wasn't
Brandon's like, I don't get any say in anything. He's
It
like,
wasn't-
the kippahs are mine.
It
You can have the
wasn't
kippahs.
even like that. It was that we knew we wanted to get married on the water, so we were looking at a couple of places in Mass and Boston because they have water over there, obviously. And then our really good family friend is the GM of the Palms in Miami, and so they were like, have the wedding here, and we were like, yeah, one of my favorite hotels in the country. Oh my gosh! And so then we ended up having it there, and it was on the beach, and the day before and the day after was like a monsoon, and they literally took everything in. They were like, yeah, there's no way this is happening outside. And then it became 72 degrees, 0 humidity, and the most clear day in the entire universe. Like no one even broke a sweat. It was just perfect cool. It was the craziest thing. It was so wild. And so we got married we had the ceremony on the beach, and then we had the reception afterwards, and it was like friends. For us, it was very intimate. It's like 120 people, which is like nothing for us. The hinna itself was like 350 people or something. And people crashed it. People found out it was my hinna and like ended up showing up. It was really annoying.
That's bizarre.
Yeah.
What did you wear?
For the wedding, I wore this really beautiful Pronovius gown that I like loved. It was like long sleeves. It was like an A-line cut.
Did you design it, or do they?
It was the first wedding dress I'd ever tried on. And it had like a really deep cut in the back, and I was like, they'd have to put fabric on it, so I have to figure out a way to like around this, and they wouldn't do it. But I found a boutique that carried the dress, and then they asked for extra fabric, and they did it for me. So that happened, and it was so beautiful. It was plain simple, and it just had like these cut out flower like. What is it? Appliques. Yeah, appliques on the front. So simple. My grandmother thought it was I had a very, very beautiful veil. It was just like a really clean, simple dress, and I was so happy. Like I've worn such like crazier outfits at events and stuff, but for that, I just wanted it to be like really pretty and simple.
I love that. Okay, last question. Yeah. The hardest question yet. What's next?
That's a really great question.
Isn't that such an annoying question? Because you're like, oh my god, where do I go?
It's not. So it's not an annoying question. It's just like what? Oh, did you say brunch? Yeah, I didn't even hear you say that. I just knew that's what you were. That's what you said. We were going to ask you for a brunch recommendation.
Oh yeah, no. All the places.
That is marriage. We end up like finishing each other's sentence. Like sometimes we'll say like sentence fragments, and then we look at each other and we're just like, never mind.
Do you have a nickname for each other?
Our names are Noor and Adam. There's no nicknames. It doesn't get shorter than that.
I guess you're right.
Yeah. Okay. So what's next?
Besides brunch.
Besides brunch. So we're working on an incredible podcast and video series, and nothing I can talk about right now. But there's a couple of podcasts, and a couple of docu-series.
Give me an exclusive content piece for No Filter.
I want to so bad.
Tell me something that you haven't told anybody.
What the content is,
but I can't. Nothing is done. Like no deals are done. That's the only reason I can't.
Smart business. Every day we're hustling.
Yeah, you have to.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I'll say it, and then they'll be like, oh, well, the deal fell through. Which, trust me, like, oh my gosh, getting things done in this industry is the hardest thing ever, and it's which is why at the end of the day, you got to do it yourself. That's kind of been our motto now.
That's what I say. If you want something done,
do
it yourself.
100%. We've spent the last year and a half trusting other people, and you just
keep it lean.
What? Oh, I mean, Sold in America won some awards, which I guess is a great thing.
Of course it did.
But also I'm not allowed to like talk about that until May.
Okay, you know what we can talk about in closing that would be helpful to me and my listeners and your listeners? As a journalist for, podcasts are all the rage, what advice do you have specifically for me for No Filter, but also anyone that's starting a podcast to get exposure for their podcast, to better it?
I would say figure out a way to Because podcasts are so beautiful and wonderful in that you gain an incredibly loyal following and people who are so engaged. I think people are more engaged when you're listening to a podcast than when you're listening to a video. People retain more information, they spend more time listening to it, and then they go on social and they want to be a part of the conversation, because podcasts are for a specific type of audience. They're people who want to spend their time listening and learning, right? So that's one thing, is like to tune into that. And also, I think that like the more content that you get, like make sure that I love that we're doing like a video version of this, we're doing socials, you're able to like collect as much content as you can. And then one thing that I learned from yesterday at the awards show that really, really stuck with me, and I think that this could apply to this, was the CMO of Shea Moisture, and she said, I hate the word targeting when you're like targeting a specific audience, because targeting sounds like you're in a crossfire, and I don't like it. Doesn't make you feel uncomfortable.
Right.
When you want to bring somebody to your brand, or in this case to your podcast, use an invitation. Invite them to be a part of this. Invite them and welcome them into this.
Great.
And to me, I thought about it, and I was like, how many times do I go into a business meeting and they're like, who's your target audience? Who are you targeting? And you never think anything about it, but I was just like, wait a minute. Yeah, I'm not targeting you, I'm inviting you, I'm welcoming you into this so that you can be a part of this. It's something incredible to be a part of, and you want to be a part of this conversation, and just remind people that we hear you and we see you, and just be authentic in what you're saying and doing. Podcasts are a way, I mean, I was gonna say to stay unfiltered, and obviously this is called No Filter, but it's a way for you to truly like tap into that and to be like, this is the most raw and incredible conversations you can have with people. It's less pressure, and the reason that people follow along when it comes to podcasts specifically is because they see genuine conversation happening. Like when there isn't genuine conversation, or people sound like they're asking you questions but they're not bouncing. Like I love that we went off script with this, and I love that you asked questions stemming from other questions. That's something that's one of my like secrets, is I'll come up with a list of questions so that I have them in mind if things go awry.
You're
But
like, oh my God,
yeah,
this one's a dud.
but most of the time, don't even use them. It's just a simple, because I truly believe that like whatever conversations that you have, whatever questions that you asked are the ones that were meant to be told. It's the ones that you were meant to have the conversation about. Everything else, it wasn't meant to happen.
That's such good advice, because I always before, especially because you and I hadn't met before, so
Yeah.
on the podcast we've had Questlove, Andy Roddick, Brooklyn Decker, Gary Vaynerchuk, Chef Flynn. If you guys been to his restaurant, you'd love it.
Oh my gosh.
He's like 18 or
Wait,
19.
which restaurant?
Flynn McGarry. It's called Gem. Gem. I'm gonna connect you guys.
I
He's
feel
so
like
cool.
I've heard about this.
You'll love it. He's like a child prodigy. But you know, especially for the people that I haven't met and I don't know, I do my research. I come up with my questions, and then I sort of obsess. Like, oh, you know I wanted to ask about Vogue or like whatever. So I have it.
Yeah.
But Gary even told me, he's like, you're so much better with Gary I didn't do anything. I'm like, I basically showed up. I just had a few drinks. Brandon's here. Like, let's get this party started. And they're the best.
That's because people want those candid, unscripted conversations, because people know when they're being given something that isn't authentic. And I'm not saying like if it's a scripted thing and it's intentional for something, it's not authentic, but the most incredible conversations, and you get people to say things that they've never said before. A lot of the stuff I said on here, like I don't typically talk about or say, or I haven't said anything because, I mean, it's no filter, but also because it was just a genuine conversation. I'm usually like the most open book ever. I tell people everything. I have nothing to hide, so it's like whatever. But to me, I love when you can tap into those experiences, because otherwise, if you're bringing me on to ask me the same things that I've been asked about a million times before, you can get, I mean, I don't mind repeating myself 100 times, but people who are going to be listening to the podcast are like, oh, I've heard her say that. Where can I hear something new? Right.
Okay, final question. Who should be my next guest? Who do you think is the most interesting person right now, or who are you excited by that you'd want to tune into? I
think your next guest should be our good friend Idris Sandhu. Yeah.
Can we lock it up?
Yeah, I mean, done. Of course, he's an incredible tech whiz. He got his first job at Google when he was 13, coded for Instagram, Uber, was the head of design and tech at Yeezy, and is now working on one of the most incredible projects I have ever seen, and he can speak for himself. He's 21 and is one of our favorite. He actually helped build the store, Nipsey Hussle store, and was a really big part of the store because of the tech aspect of it, which was like really incredible. And just he is wise beyond his years and is also one of the best humans. He's also
I'm
good
so,
friends with
can we
Yara.
Get him here right now? Maybe, and we have to, Yara's I'm supposed to do Yara and Carrie, but we've been
Yeah.
having our rescheduling. We will get them and your friend.
Yeah,
I'm so excited. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for